God is not 1 plus 1 equals 2. God is a God of multiplication. The intentionality that we put in the mission, in the excellence, in the roles that our brands, our services play in the marketplace, God multiplies this.
God just aligns you in some way, but you still have to take an ownership of it.
Hello, Masterpiece Makers. Welcome to the Making a Masterpiece podcast. And right now, guys, we're doing a special series called Build Your Brand. And what we basically do, if you just join us in the middle of this series, we are going through the Kingdom Brand Compass with my amazing co-host all the way from Namibia, Bennie Smith Jr. Hi, Bennie.
Away, everyone.
Yes. And I was just saying that if you just joined us in the middle of our series, and we are going through the Kingdom Brand Compass, wherein we take every single part of the compass, this branding compass, and we discuss every single part of it to help you transform your business into an amazing kingdom brand. And that's basically what we're doing here. And today we are going to talk about the east part of the compass called the mission. One of my favorite lines in Masterpiece is called "The signature of a masterpiece is excellence." And you know what, Bennie? There is a backstory to this line. When I was a junior designer in the advertising agency back in the days, I had this fascination and this obsession of trying to put your signature into an artwork in the ads that we were making.
Okay.
I know that's not allowed.
It's not allowed.
Because when you're making an ad, it is not like you're making a Where's Waldo or, this kind of like little things that you hide, or like what they call it, like you call it Easter eggs, right? You hide in the ad to have that feeling that it's yours. So I had that weird stage of my career of trying to do that. I wanted to do a signature look, and I forgot that this is advertising and not art. So one day I went to my boss and I asked him a question that was, now it feels so stupid. I asked him, "Sir, why don't we put our name on the print ad that we made it so that we can get more sales?" Oh my goodness. My boss, I just saw his eyes like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "This is advertising. They pay us to do this." And I'm like, "Yeah, but why don't we put our own like little signature there?" And he's like, "Norbert, it is not our job to put our names there. I want people to see that we do excellent work, and that's how we get discovered." And this is where I got that revelation of like, the signature of a masterpiece is really excellence. Your work speaks for itself, right?
Yeah.
That is the way things get discovered. What is your take on that topic, Bennie? Excellence. When you say excellence in a brand or a work, what comes into your mind?
Well, I'm the guy who's going to take it back to scripture, right? So, yeah, it's Colossians 3 verse 23. Whatever you do, work it with all your heart as for working for the Lord. And the thing that I had to learn is that excellence doesn't mean perfectionism. It's giving your best. And for me, correlating it with that verse is that it's worship in action, kind of like a way. So excellence, it's not perfection, it's worship in action. It's something that, you have to discipline because it can control you, but it should be something that kind of measuring tool. Once it's a measuring tool, if you make it a part of like your just natural activity, it's like, okay, cool, we're going to give our best. Then I believe then you can create a lifestyle of excellence. But make sure it's excellence, not perfectionism, because perfectionism is it's going to be an unobtainable goal, I guess. If I can ask you, in that idea that you had there, which was you wanted to align yourself like putting something in there, and that for you was like something that was signature, and you wanted to do that. So what are some quiet warnings that someone might have a mission, but they do things that might be like, in this case, like you said, they misalign it. And you want to put like things there, but then what's the point? Maybe people are actually going to see it. So some people will do stuff. And what are the warning signs when somebody is doing something that's someone's brand mission might be doing something that's invisible? They might be misaligning stuff and serving things that like Luckily, the person you were working for, they were like, no, this is not our thing. So we're going to focus on serving what we need to serve.
Yeah. Oh, I think that misalignment
Mm,
in the execution of excellence is something that can easily put brands in their blind spots because you are so in it. And sometimes when you're so focused on certain measurements or you compare yourself to others, we talked about the mandate and how we're
mm,
supposed to be aligned to our real purpose. And sometimes I know because as human as we are, we falter and sometimes we get to see some directions that not necessarily are aligned to our purpose. You get distracted with some sort of metrics. So sometimes you feel like your sales are really down and you think immediately that the solution is just to put more logos on everything so that
yeah.
people can see you more. That's like a knee jerk response. That's like reflex. And these things can be hurtful when you're not mindful of how you align everything. So, just for example, poor branding is not necessarily a marketing issue, it is a mission clarity issue. What I remember sometimes is see so many handcrafted products for sure, like they're really organic and made with love and like very homemade and
Mm,
it's just like beautifully
authentic.
authentic and excellently
Yeah.
done in the homes. But because they're not packaged excellently or
Mm,
they're lost in the storytelling
mm.
process or they don't have any idea how to do it properly, it doesn't look as excellent as it is compared to a mainstream one.
The idea I'm seeing is like you're offering something valuable. The picture that I get is you're offering something valuable, and I mean, at least you believe it is. And then the response
Hmm.
is like crickets, like crickets in the room. And then like
Yes.
you stand in front of people, you just said something profound, and this is what you have to get, and it's just crickets. What you feed is full of something, but there's almost no fruit, if I can put it that way. And
Yeah.
you're praying and you're working and you're tweaking it, something still doesn't land. And yeah, maybe the issue isn't your product. Maybe it's your passion. Maybe it's your purpose. Maybe it's your why. And that's, like you said, it's the clarity. It's the clarity of the
Yes.
mission.
I would love to like believe it, like if we go back to the example of how nature does it. I really love the example of how God paints us a picture of a wildflower in the wilderness.
Mm,
The flower, its main job is to bloom and it's just to look amazing, right? And all the necessary elements will come to it. But it was just true to its core,
mm,
in true to its identity of being that flower, playing its role. And I feel like sometimes comparison to brands, especially when you don't have the resources in the beginning, we tend to really obsess with the marketing.
mm,
I hear a lot of coaches, I hear a lot of brands. They ask me about a lot of performance marketing tactics, thinking that this is the sole solution to low sales. But what brands, what businesses like always miss is that because the identity, because of the kind of excellence their service or their product delivers is not as valuable as it is perceived outside, then the customers are not attracted to that. It's just like when the flower is not really very attractive, the insects won't come. You know? I,
I like it.
I mean, I know it's a very basic picture, but in school, that God created the flowers, the petals are colorful because it needs to be attractive.
Mm,
And this is what I think brands need to remember, that we are responsible for our own identity in putting excellence in this sense in the compass. We call this excellence infused in the products. And that's why we call it a mission, because our products, our services are on a mission. And that has to be aligned. Sometimes I feel I have a righteous anger when it's a strong word. When I see a lot of friends and businesses who are really, really doing so good, great stuff, and they want to make a living out of their passion and they really have a heart to do things with the Lord, but because this is not aligned, it makes it hard to push something into the market.
mm. You pointed out something there. A key thing to understand in the kingdom principles, like what is your role in someone's life? And if you try to be all at once, you can become overwhelming and you become like the value of what you bring becomes questionable, because it doesn't say the value that you're bringing isn't there, but to that particular market and that particular person, it becomes like maybe too overwhelming. It becomes too much. And that's where if you really play into the role and like that substance and strength that you actually have, then it becomes something that you can actually own. And so listening to what you're saying is it's about the alignment. It's understanding exactly like the why and now figuring out the how to distribute it. And so the subpar branding, I'm quoting, I think that Norbert is the first person that ever said that to me. And I was like, subpar branding. For me, it's like the explanation of you're unclear about your calling. And it's this thing of, I have something to do. Many are called, few are chosen. Kind of like, that's the idea that comes to me. And I have something to do. I have something to serve in, but I do not know where to go with it. And that obviously leaves you feeling stuck. And for me, this is something that I saw in my life. It's kind of like the reason why we have a business, is that we had this opportunity to help the churches in our community with setting up live streaming during the pandemic. And for me, my mission was just helping people, right? And helping them see their potential. And then we were helping the churches like set up their stuff, because we couldn't gather in spaces because of like the lockdown restrictions and all that. So we just started aiding with the gifts that we had. And sometimes I pray that this happens for everyone. God just aligns you in some way, but you still have to take an ownership of it, right? And we got good at this thing, helping the churches, to the point where even businesses started seeing like, we can do this for them. And at this point, that's kind of like what forged the business. And so just through seeing a problem, there was a lack in aiding, like we couldn't gather, but we knew how to do this media thing. And then we offered it as a service, so that when everybody had to like do gatherings or they had something to say in their business or do some PR or something like that, we could offer that as a service. And so that became the assignment. And so we used the strength that we had, we used the assignment that we had, and then we pushed it into an area. So the value that we brought, we took ownership of it. We pushed the value into an area. And so just doing that, later on, our business now does media advertising for people. But by starting there, by taking ownership of it, you have to forge it with your strengths, and you have to forge it with a purpose. Like I said, my purpose was just helping people. And through this, we helped the churches, and that allowed us to take ownership of it. And eventually we got to help businesses. And so the alignment just became the how. The why was still always there. And that's the big thing. So we have to get clear on the mandate. And now we're getting to the big areas. Approaching a church is easy because they need the product and they lack maybe the media resource. But now, how do you approach businesses? How do you sell yourself to them? And then now, this is where a new forging takes place, right? But the mission doesn't remain quiet. That was the thing. And it got phrased into one sentence, which was, how can we serve you? It was as simple as that. That was the alignment. The alignment is, how do we serve you? And the alignment with how we were doing that was through media. I'm sharing this story as like, I'm hoping it paints a picture for people how to get into the alignment of stuff. Now we have to focus on, okay, cool. The market is professionals. The market is corporate. So how do they want to see the approach? It doesn't change our authenticity. It doesn't change why we're doing what we're doing. But I realized that the way that I approach a church and the way I approach a corporate, the authentic side stays the same. But the language and the tone has to be a slight bit different.
Yeah, I love it, because you just demonstrated how the heart behind this part of the compass, Benny, because it's really incorporating that level of excellence into the products and services that a brand or business gives. Now, I want to really make that clear, and I think it's so profound, and it was just on point what you said, that your reason of why you did services media as the services as a product, the origin story is amazing, right? But then it looks different packaged in terms of depending on who is engaging with you. And this is exactly why the mission is very important. It tells you, it challenges you to become excellent in the particular area of authority that you are owning. Because you just can't show up there as a media company and bring an old school tape recorder, and it just doesn't work like that anymore. You need to be seen as a brand who knows what they're doing, who can deliver in such a quality, and whose value is really high
Hmm.
in terms of perception and even in terms of quality. So I love what you said, that the pandemic made you discover your business,
Yeah.
right? Years ago, I started a personal journey to help provide professional creative communication solutions to brands born out of faith and big dreams, but running on limited resources. Before finding my true calling in ministry, I was an advertising professional, and I always felt frustrated whenever a great idea, product, service, or community initiative didn't take off simply because branding wasn't a priority. I've seen too many faith-oriented entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders make this mistake because they don't have access to professional creative services, or they are put off by the high cost and consumerist approach. I decided to use my experiences in mainstream advertising and in ministry to bridge the gap. The result is a 6-module branding course that can help transform brands, effectively tell their stories, reach their audience, and help them achieve their goals. Teaching this to business owners and leaders, I've seen it transform confusing concepts into real brands that cut through the noise and make real everyday impact. I believe that brands can be a blessing to the world, solving problems and easing burdens, fueled by passion and driven by purpose. That is what we aim to do with Masterpiece Kingdom Brands. If this resonates with you and you're ready to uncover your Kingdom brand, let's connect. Sign up for the Masterpiece Kingdom Brand Building course today.
And the principle there is like a problem is an opportunity. Okay. If you use the strengths, if you look at your why, and you can find some, like, this is even branding anymore. This is like entrepreneurship insight here, but that's entrepreneurship. It's like you find your strength and you look at like, where is there a problem? And then we say like entrepreneurs are people that find solutions. And so if you can find the solution to the problem, so a problem is an opportunity. You find the solution to it. And if you have the strengths and the tool and it's part of like your why, guess what? You just found a mission, man. And if you can then create that mission to serve in the capacities that you have, right? Because I believe every role is God assigned, but God reveals it to us sometimes in very uncomfortable situations. So as an entrepreneur, if you're struggling right now, you're in a good place because you're really in a place of relying on God to show you where to from here. And when you have that assignment, you have to get clear about it. You have to get very clear about it. Again, we're talking about alignment. And it's like you have to remind yourself of your why, the mandate. But then you constantly have to restate your mission to yourself. One of the things that we do with our companies is like you have to challenge the mission the whole time, because the mission is not about the plan. The mission is not about the plan. The mission is about like, where's this directed towards? Because if you have a great plan and you're steering the thing in the wrong direction, then you're just going to end up with the wrong value. And one of the coaches that I had, he would use this analogy of why and how, the full, what do you call it? We talk about that circle, about the why, how, and the what. And then the value of it is a kind of math equation. You know, math is not about finances or numbers. Math is about problem solving. And the thing is, if you take one, if you bring value in why, which is 1, and you bring value in how, 1 times 1, then you get an equivalent of 1. But if your why is great, say if you got like a why that is 20, you know, you got a mission and a purpose and a mandate that has so much value, and you times that 1. So say it's something like 20, and you times it 1, you got 20. But if you got like a heavy why and you now find an alignment with a mission that has like 40, what's the value then going to be then?
Wow.
But if the why is great, but the mission is 0, then we can end up with 0. You have to get serious about this. In coaching people with brands, we get you really fixated on the why, and we challenge the why, we challenge the mandate, we challenge if you really understand the authentic purpose behind you. And then once you start addressing the hows, especially in the compass, in going into your mission, this is the statement in which you say how you serve. And that thing is going to be the constant thing that people are going to evaluate you on, because that's how you show up. That's how it
Yeah,
looks. That's how it
absolutely.
comes and presented. I can be somebody that's full of substance, full of growth, but I pay attention to how I present myself because I want it to be clear that I'm somebody that is responsible in this. I could come into
Mm.
this podcast looking like, hey, like just looking fuzzy, not taking care of myself and all that. I can still bring the value that's authentic to me, but already the way I'm presenting myself is going to polarize a lot of people. And that's not being surface level. That's just being mindful and appropriate with it. And get what we're saying here. We're not saying that mission is completely just visual design. What we're saying is the approach in stewarding the mission needs to be very
Mm.
intentional. If it has no intention, people are going to get skeptic about it. People are way more smarter than you think. It's going to feel like an agenda, and we're going to start seeing, oh, you just want my money and all that. No, people want to believe in this, and they want to look at how you go about executing it. If you've got something that's beautiful and something that has value, if you're somebody that bakes and you've got pastries that taste good and all that, but you just like slam it together and when you put it on the bowl and it just looks like blub. And I love it when people put dishes in front of me and it just looks like, what is this? And then no, please try it. It tastes delicious. But when you look at it, it's like, if you did not intentionally encourage and force me to eat this, I would probably never tasted this. And that's just
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
human condition, man. And then you get like professional chefs that spend heavy effort, big plates, small amounts of dishes, and the value of
Yeah,
that thing increases so much because the
absolutely.
presentation and the mission of it, the why, the flavor, everything comes together. And that is
Mm.
why you need to be intentional about forging this thing together.
Ah, that's so good, Betty. It's so, so profound. And to add to that, because you mentioned it in that whole statement of yours, that I just also want to remind our masterpiece makers that remember that we're doing this with the Lord. And the beauty about doing this with the Lord is that God's economy is really completely insane. And that's what Betty said. God is not 1 + 1 = 2. God is a God of multiplication. Now,
Yes.
the intentionality that we put in the mission, in the excellence, in the roles that our brands, our services play in the marketplace, God multiplies this.
Hmm.
And you'd be surprised. I tell you, we have to put in the work, we have to sow the seed, but you'd be surprised how God multiplies that because that's what he does best, right?
Mhm.
If we go back to the flower in the field example, the flower's just there, the insects comes and do whatever they need to do, and it multiplies. And there'll be more flowers on the field. So that's sort of like an image that we would love to put in your head. And as what Benny said, this part of the mission,
Hmm.
I just want to give briefly like how this module looks like. We're going to help you craft and articulate your mission through the expression of your excellent products and services. And in this whole part of the course, we'll talk about like brand touch points, about your tangible benefits, and really challenge you to make sure that you are able to show up and deliver an excellent product or service.
Hmm.
Because not only are is your perceived value very high, but it's actually the best way to honor our God because God does not treat us with mediocrity,
Yes.
right? He is always showing up, he's always excellent,
Amen.
and he doesn't shortchange us.
Hmm.
So we don't have the right, if we are truly kingdom people, we don't have the right to reflect him in the other way of just showing up just because.
Going on that, like, I want you to expand on, because bringing out of this compass, bringing out the nature of excellence in this, like from
Mhm.
you, Norbert, why do you believe and how do you encourage entrepreneurs that excellence is the non-negotiable, especially for kingdom brands, especially when it comes to
Oh,
their mission?
I would say excellence is the bloodline of the brand. It is what keeps your brand together. It is the first point of contact that you and your ministry or your target audience will have. And you know what? In marketing terms, we say, okay, the first contact is probably the logo. Yes, the
Hmm.
logo is your most simple first point of contact. But imagine that you have a very poorly designed logo. You didn't think it through. Your logo does not showcase any kind of excellence. How will your customer feel about that? And how are you reflecting the values, the purpose, and the why? And I know a logo cannot say everything, but it represents something. It's almost like when people hear your name, which is your own logo, what do they think about you?
Correct.
How do they perceive you? And what are the associations, the values that they think about you when they hear your name?
Correct.
It's exactly the same. And that's why, again, it's very important to emphasize that this is not perfection. And I mean, Benny, I know that you probably feel the same way. I've been an art director and a creative director, and I had such a big problem with perfectionism because, you know, when you were doing commercials and media, we are trained to look at the corners of the frame that make
we
sure
see the
everything
things that
is.
you don't think we see.
And this is the things that like make me like cringe, you know, when you're like,
Yes.
how did that come through?
Yes.
I had to forgive myself and unlearn this process, not because we become mediocre and this is not anymore a practice, but because this process is really hurting growth.
It distracts from the worship. Excellence is not elitism, it's worship, right? And if you blur that line for yourself, if you blur that line, again, if you're making it about perfectionism, and you guys, you all don't understand like how difficult it is for Norbert and I to say this. We both come from graphic design backgrounds, is we're saying like it's not about perfectionism, but our brains work in aesthetics. We work in the balance. Norbert is blessed. He lives in Germany. You know, he gets to walk around and look like a German architecture and things are like balanced and just all that. I live here in Namibia, and then sometimes I walk down my neighborhood and I just think like, what was this person's idea with this color on this house? Like that's how our brains work. We are constantly like looking at the world, even when we're not involved. But at some point, if I focus on trying to perfect the whole thing, it becomes a weight and a burden where I lose focus on the worship. I lose focus of the substance of the thing. In some way, we have to admit to ourselves that maybe sometimes we're a bit more superficial than we want to acknowledge. And when you're building the brand, you realize that it's the substance that really brings out the excellence. If it's not bringing out excellence, guys, then we got to question it, because
We got a problem.
yeah, we got a problem. Biblically, Romans 12, present your body, and I want to say your business, as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable. And so what does God expect holy and acceptable? And some of us will just be like, you know, I gave effort. And somebody clipped that. So, but it's got to be holy and acceptable. It's got to look presentable. It's got to look like beautiful. If I can say this, the market can tell you when you cut corners. Norbert, like you said, you have these lines and processes where something has to go through to be approved, and sometimes things slip through, and then you hear like the feedback and you realize people can see where you cut corners, and so can the Spirit.
Oh, absolutely. Even more.
Even more. And so that's the thing. We need to be honest with ourselves. Like, how much are we really putting ourselves into what we're doing? How much are we really building, like Norbert said, a signature of excellence? And it's excellence is what tells your ministry. It's what says, I value you enough to actually be prepared.
Yeah.
I value you enough to actually show up on time. And those are all the areas that's part of your brand. People think it's just visual art and visual direction, all that. No, showing up on time for a meeting is a representation of your brand. Spell checking your email can be a representation of your brand, especially depending on your market. And again, guys, we're not trying to make this about the superficial things and trying to make like every single thing, you know, again, it's not about perfection, but it's really about being intentional in taking ownership of every area of your brand. I also want to say this, you can start with anything. When we started this business, we had an old DSLR that I bought back in 2013, and I had to borrow my mics from the church. But the thing is, the mission stayed the same. The mission was to serve. I didn't have the excellent stuff, but the mission was excellent.
Wow.
The way that I poured myself into it was every single thing. It didn't matter. You could give me a cell phone and we would shoot the thing. But when it came to the editing process, I made sure I spent time that we delivered something that was good. I would pull through sleepless nights, not to burn myself out, but because I knew when I put this in front of people, I'm putting in front of people that are going to receive a substance. They're going to receive a posture of something. And I want to be very intentional about that posture. And like Norbert said, God multiplies. And that's the beauty of it. If you just steward that one thing, it's like we just did this one video for one client, and God did the rest. Because he who is faithful with a little can be trusted with much.
Yeah.
And why did it happen? I pray that that's my heart. This is something I believe, and I'm a worship leader in our church. And I'm somebody who spends time on his guitar. I am very detailed on like practicing. And this is what I encourage my team with is in the scripture, it says, before David could play before the king, he was practicing in the garden. If we're not practicing, if we're not being intentional, if we're not perfecting our skill, if we're not improving it, you don't have to have it perfect. But we need to improve. We need to grow towards excellence. We need to steward it towards presenting something that is a reflection of what God sees as excellent.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And wow, masterpiece makers, you heard a lot today, hey, and I think you can hear our passion about excellence. And you're probably wondering, how is this going to be applicable to you? And I think our challenge today as we normally give you one piece of challenge every episode, this is to help you discover your posture of excellence. To end our conversation today, I want all of you masterpiece makers, to answer this one particular question. And I believe that when you are able to answer this question, you are able to step into the unique role that your brand or your business plays into the marketplace that can serve people. Now, this one-liner will become your brand's unwavering commitment and your posture for excellence. Now, the question is, when all else fails, we will blank. When all else fails, we will blank. Take a moment, ask yourself that honest question, talk to your team about it, because at the end of the day, when all is stripped off, what is left with your service or brand? That's probably the real source where your excellence is coming from. Again, just to wrap that off, you need to ask this question: when all else fails, we will blank. And once you have answered that question, please drop it in the comments, and we'd love to hear from you guys. And remember that the signature of a masterpiece is excellence. Okay, Benny, any last words before we let our masterpiece makers go?
When all else fails, we will still make businesses and brands that point people to Christ. So,
come on, that's so good. You heard it, masterpiece makers. Thank you so much for joining us in this special episode series, and we are excited to see your statements. And join us next time on our special podcast episode here in the Making a Masterpiece podcast, where we are very, very passionate and obsessed about building your faith and inspiring your business. Till next time, we'll see you soon.